If there are, I mean, somebody carried it out, okay? If you can't find out who did it, you can't punish anybody. Okay, that's just a fact. You can't find out who did it, you can't punish anyone. And you certainly do not reach justice by carrying out activities which are aimed at hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people who had nothing to do with it. And they're the ones who are being attacked at this minute. Okay? That has nothing to do with just war. I mean, if you cannot, if evidence can be found, suppose you do find the perpetrators, and you have a really solid case against them, well, then problems arise. For example, the problems that Nicaragua faced in a much more serious terrorist war, remember. You know, what happened on September 11th is bad enough, but killing tens of thousands of people in a poor country and practically wiping it out, or doing what Time magazine and the New York Times were so happy about in their own words, that's worse. And they knew who the perpetrators were, no secret, and they had a judgment against them from the highest judicial body, namely the World Court. And they could have had a Security Council resolution if the perpetrator hadn't vetoed it. And yes, they couldn't do anything about it. It's not easy to bring perpetrators to justice. I mentioned another case, Haiti. They cannot bring Emmanuel Constant to justice. And remember, we're only talking about 4,000 or 5,000 black people, right? And that's, by comparative to the United States, that's hundreds of thousands of people killed. But they can't do anything about it. And they can't do anything about it not because of an abstract entity called America, but because people like us aren't doing anything about it. Don't put the blame anywhere else. Let's look in the mirror, you know. If we want Emmanuel Constant brought to justice, we can do something about it. And we could have done it years ago. And yes, if we don't do it, they'll never be able to handle it. They're running up against a much bigger force. If the United States could have had any substantial evidence against Osama bin Laden, they would have them in their hands right now. I mean, I don't see any reason to doubt. I mean, the Taliban maybe, think anything you like about them. I mean, the worst criminal since, Attila the Hun or whatever you like. There's every reason to believe that they're quite sincere in not wanting to be bombed in smithereens, and if they could prevent that by handing over bin Laden, they'd probably do it, just like they've offered. But their request that there be some evidence is not an unreasonable request.
You don't think that's a ruse?
I don't know if it's a ruse. There's one way to find out. There's exactly one way to find out, and that is to try it. Now, obviously, the United States doesn't think it's a ruse. If otherwise, they would try it. And when they see, well, they're not handing them over, okay, then you proceed. But they don't want to take that chance. Not only do they not want to take the chance, but the government has a deeper principle, the one that I mentioned. We do not need a powerful state does not want authorization, because that weakens its power. If you have to have authorization from someone, you are not, powerful enough to do anything you choose. The same reason why the mafia don does not want a court order. Suppose some mafia don is being paid by some guy, a grocer or something. He doesn't go after a court order to get the money. He doesn't want a court order. He wants to send his goons in to beat him to a pulp. That's called credibility. And it happens that that's the way states operate. Some of them can get away with it, the more powerful ones. Most of them can't get away with it. Maybe they'd like to, but Luxembourg can't handle it, or Andorra. But countries like the United States can, unless we stop them. And the only place that a powerful state can be stopped is within. Yes, there are problems in bringing them to justice, but I don't think the U.S. wants to, for the reasons that I mentioned. For one thing, they probably don't have evidence. For another thing, if he is brought to trial, it's going to open up all sorts of questions that they certainly do not want opened, like the kind that I mentioned. So, yeah, there are problems, and other countries have faced them very hard problems, like they can't do it if it's the U.S. who's carrying out the terror or who's safeguarding the terrorists. No, there's nothing they can do. We can do it, but Haiti and Nicaragua can't. But the United States is not going to have those impediments.